Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
Bethany.
Yeah?
You blew it.
What did I do this time?
You know what you did. You know exactly what you did, ma'am.
I missed our anniversary.
You missed your anniversary.
No, it's our anniversary.
Yeah,
that makes it sound even worse.
I was expecting,
to walk into flowers and I don't know, something.
And this is how our staff, I feel like how I feel in the office.
You should.
Because I've been historically terrible at acknowledging anniversaries. I think we've talked about that in another episode. And, but in my defense, actually not my defense, whatever, even my marriage anniversary, my husband's the one who has to remind me of that. I'm just terrible at stuff like that. Time just keeps rolling. I don't
pay attention to it.
Yes. And so now I'm
now you can dish it out to me.
Yes. Although you could dish it out to me too. This is, again, it's an anniversary.
Thankfully, we're both bad at it.
Yes. Yes.
So,
but see, anniversaries shouldn't be just one-sided.
Yes. They're a together thing that we totally missed. So we're technically a couple weeks into season 4 of Managing Dental Drama. Where's the confetti? Where's the bazooka?
Where's the champagne? Pause, y'all. We're going to go get our champagne.
I didn't bring any.
See, look, like I said, you've done me wrong. The way we talk about this podcast of all the ways.
I can share some of this coffee I drank out of.
Is it still hot?
It is. So yes, happy anniversary to you.
Happy anniversary, friend. Congratulations.
Our wonderful little podcast. Yes. And we're still here. We're still doing it. Can you believe it?
We're still doing it. Yeah, I'm happy we are. I'm very
excited.
So
I guess now we'll be recording somewhere we'll be getting close to this year the 200 mark of episodes.
That is ridiculous.
Isn't that crazy?
How do we have so much nonsense to say?
Well, and surprisingly, still content that's relevant. I was just sharing with you right before we hit the play button here that last week, or 2 weeks ago, because we didn't publish last week due to Labor Day, but the termination episode, I just got a ton of feedback from people on how helpful that was. So somehow, episode 100 and whatever it is at this point, it's still content that's relevant, which feels good.
Well, so I would say congratulations to you, but also to our listeners that y'all are still listening.
It's so true.
We're still babbling.
Y'all get out your bazookas. Celebrate yourself. You survived 3 years of us.
Yes, and you're still managing your dental drama,
yes.
Which is why you're here.
Yes.
Yeah. So celebration
true.
For all.
It's celebration for all. Yes. Happy anniversary
to everybody.
Happy
anniversary, friend. Cheers.
So, what do you want to talk about today?
I know you mentioned that the termination episode was helpful, and then I thought about, because I know you mentioned that one of your clients was saying that it would be good to have follow up to that, and now having been post the termination, which, by the way, we've had another termination.
Yes.
So when we recorded that episode, it was just one person. And we really didn't know. I really didn't know where I would fall because, for y'all who've been listening consistently, it's, I've had this front desk turmoil for a while now. And so we let the one go. But I was like, is that going to settle everybody else down? Where are we with this? And so the next week we ended up terming another one, which was not the plan. There was no plan, honestly. It was just kind of, where are we going? And we had our leadership meeting, which we find very helpful. We hadn't had one all summer because we took a break from the summer, and so that kind of was good for some clarity. And so again, there was not a plan. We were, the plan easily could have been, let's ride this out for a little bit and let's see with this person gone where we end up. But when we kind of reconvened and kind of went, what are our goals? What are our issues? Where are we going? It kind of became evident that we needed to make a few more changes. And so that termination happened. And so now we are 2 weeks post that, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
And so I thought the question that your client brought up was really relevant because I've been living it now for basically 3 weeks, because now we fired the one, we let the next one go. And so now we have been dealing with the aftermath of that in a couple of different ways. And so I think what your client was asking was, how do you convey to the rest of the team the what and why? Like, what are those conversations like? I think another subset could be that's worth visiting or talking about is, okay, so yes, like in the episode for termination, we talked about like just getting the person out of the building before they have their emotional reaction, because that's one thing that you talked a lot about in that episode was you just need to focus and get out, like quick, move. But that person's going to drive off the property. And that doesn't mean that's where the interactions end with you and this person.
Correct. Yep.
And so I did want to talk about some of that. And then there's the aftermath, not only of explaining it to your staff, but then actually dealing with, but now what are we doing? Like logistically, what are our next steps? So I think there's a lot of follow-up points to, again, I don't know that I have any strong pieces of advice of what you should do. I'm hoping you have some of those, but if nothing else, at least talking through some of the things that could come up, just so that people are maybe have the heads up to go, okay, yes, I do need to
prepare for some of those. At least mentally get your head in the game for what could happen on the backside of a termination. And oftentimes what will happen, like it's very seldom that, like with the first termination from a few weeks ago, there's very little that occurred afterwards, and it was different for this second one. And part of that could be just the fact that it was the second one, and now there's more conversation that's needing to happen. But to me, there's most of the time some type of aftermath that we need to deal with. If nothing else, there's things that we need to communicate to the team on what happened, and very carefully why it happened, which I think is kind of a key point in this. To me, there's a lot of times with the termination, we're worried about the impact on the team. So especially if that person's connected to somebody else, like, ooh, we worry about if we fire this one, will this one then quit? Will we have kind of a domino effect? And I think you should think through those things. There very well could be a domino effect that ends up impacting your practice. Now, I would say the times that people worry about that and the times that it actually happens is very little. Most people don't bail because a friend was fired, but you might have some aftermath internally that you need to deal with because that friend has a lot of opinions about what went down. So we've got to think through all the scenarios that could happen from this termination, and then we have to very carefully plan our communication. So I'd say one of the first things to consider is if you are concerned about subsequent people that are angry, even just if you're not worried about them leaving, but you're worried about them being angry or hurt by this, your job is to get to those people as quickly as possible. What you don't want to happen is we always go with Sally. So you fire Sally and you know Susan's very connected to Sally. What you don't want is to not approach Susan and just let this thing kind of play out, because Sally will talk to Susan and then Sally will unpack her entire side of the story, and Susan is going to be empathetic to her friend, and therefore we may have started a new problem that is brewing because of this termination of Sally and not dealing with Susan. So I would say quick communication to key team members that you're worried about, but honestly to the whole team. We don't want to sit on a termination for a week and then talk to the team about it a week later. At that point, if there was damage to be done, it has been done within a matter of a week. So quick and timely communication would be what I would suggest.
So if I can interrupt you here then and just kind of ask some questions about that, because I think especially now versus when I started in the field, we have all sorts of social media and things like that, that it is pretty immediate that that person
Yes.
is posting, talking, venting, all of that. And so you don't have time the way we maybe used to. You kind of really have to have your strategy, which I think is another reason why a lot of us don't terminate. Even though we're hoping it's going to get better, but even if I fire this person, that person is probably going to do unemployment, might sue me, might say this about me, might post bad reviews about me. If it's a smaller town or she's friends with a lot of our patients, God knows what she's putting on our Facebook that our patients follow. And then we're like, okay, and now what about the rest of the team? Because she's super good friends with Susan and Amy. And now what am I going to do? Are Susan and Amy going to, like you said, they may not leave, but are they going to leave a stink cloud in the office that I've got to deal with now? You know what? Never mind. I'm not going to terminate. I'll just keep dealing with this.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what most of us kind of do. But I do think it's worth, like, usually if that person needs to go, they need to go. But we should not bury our head in the sand. And so I think there is, and I do hear that it happens, where Sally then goes to go work for Dr. X in the next town over. She's liking her job, and then she pulls Susan over. And to me, at the end of the day, if that's what ends up happening, then you didn't want Susan anyway.
Right.
And to your point, I don't think it happens that often. What I've always found funny is more often than not, where I'm thinking Susan's going to be the one who's just devastated that Sally's gone. Susan's really not.
Yeah.
more often than not, Susan, I mean, she's still friends with Sally, but I think she probably was in a position where she saw a lot of Sally's negative impacts on the practice, whether it was a culture issue or a task issue, and maybe Susan was picking up all these extra tasks that Sally wasn't doing, and now Susan's like, oh, thank God I don't have to do that anymore. Or
You're
it's given
exactly
Susan
right.
a spot to move up, or it's given Susan a spot to unload some of the things she didn't want to do and pick up other things she did want to do. So it's funny how a lot of that works out. So it's for me, there are times where I'm just like, oh man, I just thought these people were so close, and they're not as close as we thought they were. But sometimes they are. And then if you're going to follow your friend and your friend's going to tell you this other practice is better, then go. Like, I don't need you second guessing everything I'm doing for you or doing here. Like, if you want to start over in another practice and take Sally's word for it, off you go.
Right.
Which, it does present a logistical problem for your office, especially if you only had 2 or 3 front people and now you've lost 2. But I guess from what I've always seen, we always build back up, and it's never been, I don't think, again, I know I've said this before, I don't think I've ever gone, man, we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever happened in 16 years.
Right.
14 years, whatever
which
it is.
Telling. That means, to me, when you can say that, that means you've thoroughly thought through, which we said last time, termination should always be your last resort. Do everything you can to preserve this employee. But the fact that you can look back and go, there's never been a situation that you would go back and undo from a termination standpoint, that means you put the thought into it and you terminated the people that actually needed to be terminated from your team. And that, to me, is doing terminations in the right way. And I think, to your point exactly, the reason that Susan doesn't leave after Sally gets fired is because Susan probably saw the writing on the wall. She knew it was coming too, or she saw the underperformance of Sally, might even have been compensating for some of the underperformance for Sally. And not that she's happy her friend got fired, but she's not willing to leave over it because she knew that there was performance issues. Now, if it's an unfair firing, which I don't, maybe those exist. Not in my client's office that I work with. It's never an unfair firing. But if she felt like it was unfair in some way, or that Sally wasn't given a chance to be successful or something like that, then she could still have some negative aftermath. But most of the time, they see it coming and they're not upset about it. So it shouldn't prevent you from doing what you need to do.
So the assumption is, okay, if Sally and Susie were really close, but the next onion layer is, if like they were part of your clinical team, then the front may not have any idea. Like, they might know there was a few things here and there, but they're not in it like maybe the rest of the clinical team is. And so now that's where you're like, okay, now what do I say to the clinical team? And they may have really liked Sally, but they probably didn't know one way or the other. But anytime somebody is removed from the team, then it becomes a whole unsettling, like, whoa, 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 what is happening here?
Yep.
What changed? Am I next? So
Yes.
I think the people that are more closely working around Sally might have seen it coming more.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the next layer that you've got to get ahead of. And so, for example, in our office, it was front, and I don't think back was super clued into a lot. Like, they're not going to know about all of the meetings and the talks and the meetings and the coaching talks and the this and the, they don't know all of that.
They weren't in those.
They weren't in those. They don't know. So I could totally see from their viewpoint, they're like, what just happened? Yeah. Why is somebody getting fired? Like, we don't fire a lot of people. Do we? Maybe we do. Maybe we do now. What's changing? Is the practice not doing well? Is like, it starts
this conversation that wasn't there before.
Yeah. And so it's a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainty. And so it starts like, what is happening here? So to try to get ahead of that, I think in our case, when the first one was asked to go, I don't think I really shared much about that one.
No.
And but I don't think anybody was particularly close to her but I'm sure it did have some effect on the back going, what just happened?
Yeah.
Why did that just happen? And I wasn't good. Even after, I don't think I really said much. How people find out, apparently, I've known this now a little more recently, which I didn't really realize a couple of years ago, but we have a group me office thread. And so when we fire somebody, we take them off the group me. Well, then that creates so much chatter, because like it might be on a Friday evening, everybody's home. You look at your group me and you're like, Sally has been removed from the group by Dr. Kuba. And so like now I'm like, oh God. So now I know like that's going to create chatter. And before I do that, but I need to do it pretty soon because I don't want Sally to have access to that group.
Right.
So, but for whatever reason, I didn't really say anything with this one, and there wasn't much chatter after. So I don't know.
And I think that's a really good point though that you're making, because a termination of somebody that's new, this lady wasn't new to the team by any means, but she'd been there about a year, a little less than a year.
10 months.
Yeah, 10 months. That is going to it's going to have a different ripple effect on the team than somebody that's been there 5 years or even 2 or 3 years. That's going to feel different. And so the level of cleanup that we have to do after the 10-month employee as opposed to the 3-year employee is going to be different. Just because that person's had more time to build relationships, there's more connection, there's more...
Well, and then you think about it from a stability standpoint, because you're like, whoa, that person's been there for 3 years. Who's doing their job now? What could they have done that was so wrong that they've been asked to leave? Mm-hmm. So it does. I could absolutely see where that brings this whole onion layer of what is going on.
Yeah.
So anyway, with her, we didn't really... But I don't think she was particularly close to anybody. And so it really didn't generate much of anything as far as I knew. But having said, like, was I proactive in? I wasn't. So looking back on it, I'm like, that was really dumb of me because I didn't say anything. I just
try to get out ahead of the messaging on it.
Yeah.
Which, and again, I think it played out just fine on that. I would say, for most people, I would assume that you want to say something and get out ahead of it. If they're, in their 90 days and people are realizing she still can't hold a suction correctly, people are not going to be real concerned when next thing they know she's terminated. But I think I'd rather assume that you need to say something than to assume that you don't need to say something. What we say can be very simple, especially with those that have been newer to the practice. It can be something as simple as, hey, let's do a quick huddle at the end of the day, or it can be a group me message that says, hey, just want to give you guys a heads up that, we had to release Sally today. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has tomorrow. Just wanted to let y'all know. So it doesn't have to be complex. As a matter of fact, similar to the termination, I would rather it not be complex. The less we say, the better. The more we say, the more we get ourselves in trouble with what we say.
Well, and I was just getting to that because that's the boat I found myself in. Surprise, surprise.
What?
That. Yes.
No.
Saying too much. And thinking you're trying to make it better. And so I'm glad we're having this episode because this is, like, if we had done this episode before this had happened, like, I hopefully would have followed your advice. But so again, I didn't do anything with that one. Didn't
With the
occur to
first
me.
one.
With the first one. Didn't
Yeah.
occur to me, didn't whatever. She got off group me, and I never thought anything of it. It was the second one. And I think a lot of that with the first one too is because I think it didn't go as planned, in the sense of, like, if y'all go back and listen to the episode, it was like you were supposed to do it, but then she didn't show up, but then, wait, is it going to happen today? I guess it is. Okay, is it done? So I think, like, it was just weird, and I wasn't in the office for the rest of that week, I think. So I think in my mind it was almost out of sight, out of mind. I didn't really think about the impact on the rest of the team, which is stupid, but I didn't, and it ended up fine. But then you fast forward to the second one, where again, it happened so fast. It's not like it was a plan. It's not like, okay, that one's gone, now on to the next one. We didn't know there was going to be a next one. Well, we had a team meeting, blah, 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 blah. This is what came out of it. And then certain things had to happen too. It was like, well, if this happens, then maybe we keep her on and coach her this way. But if that happens, then maybe we release her. So there was all of these things up in the air. And I think, whatever. It happened, but then that's where I was like going, uh-oh. Like, because this person's been with us for 2 years. She is connected to the office. There is a lot more aftermath with this. What am I doing? Mm-hmm. And then you go back to, okay, we had 3 people in office. Well, now we're down to 1. Mm-hmm. Well, that 1 is coming up on her 1-year anniversary. And that 1 also knows. Like, she knows she's potentially on the chopping block as well. Well, maybe the 2 thought they weren't on the chopping block because the first one was gone. And nobody said anything for a week. So I'm just kind of going, is this third person going to be like, I'm next, when is mine coming? So right. I need to talk to her. And I'm sure the people in the back, again, are going, wait a minute,
holy moly,
what
what's
is
going
happening?
On?
Right? So to say that I had a lot of foresight on it and a plan, I didn't. But I think in that moment, I was like, oh, shoot, I better get a plan pretty quick here. And this kind of segues a couple of different ways. Because one, we let her go. I think, it was on a Wednesday, but you were going to be in the office on Thursday.
Yes.
So that's where I was like, okay, it's okay. They're going to see her name come up off of GroupMe, and they're watching her leave the office. So I'm sure there's some, anxiety in the office, but whatever. It is what it is. And I also know she's probably one that has everybody's phone number, is going to blow everybody and their Facebook up. Mm-hmm. But whatever. Bethany will be in the office tomorrow. We can address it the next day. Looking back on it, if you weren't going to be in the office, what would I have done? I don't know. What would you advise I do?
So with this one, and again, this depends on the employee, but with this one and the fact that it was the second within a matter of a week, I probably would have encouraged, although you weren't in the office the day that this lady was released, but I would have encouraged a huddle at the end of the day. Because it's 2 back-to-back. The second one more consequential than the first one. The second one's going to hit the team harder than the first one did. It's a double whammy in my mind. And I wouldn't want the team going home with a lot of worry or anticipation or what's going on. And because what happens is we talk to others in that anxiety. We reach out, we speculate, we come up with, what do we think they're doing? Why do you think she was released? And we create a lot of negative narratives that we essentially want to avoid. So by talking to the team quickly, we essentially halt that narrative from happening. And it may still happen, but it's going to happen with contextual facts from the leadership team.
Which brings me to my next question of what then? Like you're saying, say less, but what do you say?
Yeah. So my encouragement is, first of all, we should approach every termination with a sadness. I think our head has got to be in the right place. Now, it could be that this person has caused a lot of problems and she's a thorn in our side and we're eager to get her out. That could be the case, but it is a loss of a relationship. Rocky or not, it's a loss of a relationship. And so we really do have to harness that emotion. And I would say most clients that I work with have that emotion.
I was going to say, who is happy about letting somebody go? Even the worst person. I've never been happy.
Yeah.
I've always been very sad. Mm-hmm. Like, how did I fail this relationship?
Yeah.
What did I do? Everything I could have done. So that's my first go-to. My second go-to always is, okay, no, like you didn't just harebrain decide this. Like there's a team of us who have thought through every aspect of all of this. But I think what weighs super heavy on me is the anxiety for that person going, you're leaving. What are you going to do now? Because you've got rent to pay, you've got kids to feed. And am I now putting you in an extra tense situation? And that's where I've got to go, well, I'm not putting you in that situation. You kind of put yourself in that situation. But then the other part of me goes, no, you're putting them in that situation. Yeah. And I have so much anxiety over that. I do not like that at all. You talked about the severance last time. I'm like, God, I hate the severance. It's so not fair. But at the end of the day, like that to me, like, yes, from a strategic standpoint, everything you mentioned in the last episode about workforce commission and blah, 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 blah. But for me, other than that, like just from human to human kind of going, you know, what are you going to do for the next 2 weeks? Yeah. If you're blindsided by this, and whether you were blindsided or not, you know, no matter how many coaching conversations you have, I don't think any of us, maybe we should say, if I have to talk to you again, that will be termination. But it's such a, I don't know, it's such a threatening thing to say, an environment to be in. And most of us are trying to avoid that at all costs, that I just don't see. And I think the person themselves, I don't know, man. But to me, at the end of the day, I'm like, this person is going to really struggle here for a couple of weeks. And I worry about that on multiple different levels. I worry about that for that person's own mental health. And then I do worry about my own. Like, are you going to come and shoot up the office? What is this going to spur you to do? So I just think, I can't imagine anybody being happy.
And to me, that's an appropriate emotion to have. I think we have to approach those terminations with a reverence and a well thought out, an evaluation of the scenario that is taking in what the impact is going to be on the person that's being released. And to me, when we're coming back around and talking to the team about it, the tone that we need to carry in that conversations, in those subsequent conversations with the team, is a sadness. So I kind of think about it like when I discipline a child of mine, you know, if they're receiving a consequence or they've got to go clean toilets because of a mistake that they made, that I'm never approaching that discipline like I gotcha, and now look at what I get to do to you. It's always, I'm sad that my child is receiving a punishment. I wish I didn't have to punish them for whatever mistake they made. And I want the rest of my children to see when that one is being punished that I'm sad about that. That doesn't make me happy that there was a consequence to this kid's actions. And the team needs to see that from the practice owner, that this was a very difficult decision to make, that there was a lot of time that was spent talking about this decision, and that ultimately you're very sad to see the person go, but at the same time, you know that they're going to find a job that makes them happier and better fits their strengths, and that's what you want for them. You want better for them. This simply was not the right fit. You really don't have to share any other details than that. They need to see your sadness over the situation because that shows your humanity in the process. It reinforces that they can trust you. That yes, they may still be worried about their job and oh my gosh, she's on a firing frenzy, but at least she's thoughtful about it. At least she feels sad about it. It's not something that she's heartless and just enjoys the termination process, because that can create a fear that I don't think is necessary. And we need to be, even if this person was just terrible at their job, we do not need to take that moment to unpack all their baggage on the team. That's not respectful to the employee that left. You can say, hey, there were some things that we were struggling with. There were some systems that Sally really struggled to implement. As many of you might have seen, we know that she's going to find a place and a system that better suits her. And that's what we want for her. So you can still give indications that there was performance related issues, but do you need to unpack everything that this person did wrong? No. I would keep it simple, keep it emotional for the team, that there was emotion and thought that went into this decision, and it's not something that you're happy about.
So then I've not asked you this since that day, but we talked about, addressing it in the team meeting. You were like, hey, I think we need to say something. I was like, oh, I absolutely was going to say something. I was waiting for the team meeting, which is why I didn't say something sooner, but I knew something needed to be said after the second one. And so I said whatever I said. And then I actually, my associate was sitting next to me, and I wrote a note to him. I was like, did I say anything inappropriate? And he was like, no, I think you're fine. But I've not asked you that. And you were there to hear what I had to say. And I think for me, because I didn't have anything planned, but right before the meeting, I was like, okay, I need to say something. But what had happened in that 24 hours was the employee reached out to me. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But then, like, she was also, like, basically how she was blindsided. And that's the tone that, like, people were like, oh, she was just fired out of the blue. And I was like, do these people really believe that? Like, I'm back to, again, that sarcastic comment I made last time, though, but about, we spend too much time training and incorporating you into our practice and into our culture and into our lives and into our patients' lives. And we've got a lot of liability and a lot on the line. And we're trying to make you a part of that doesn't just, it's not just like robotic.
Yeah.
And so to realize that that's not going to work out the way either one of you had envisioned is heartbreaking. It's like a breakup. And so to me, I'm like, if you think I just like woke up today and decided to fire you, like, that is so far from, and I guess that to me, it's like, it's not just me. Like, yes, I'm a feeling person, so it may weigh heavier on me, but I'm going to say for the non-feeler person, like, logistically, realistically, it is a stupid decision to fire people right and left. Like, it's stupid. In our industry, that doesn't work. Like, we're not what was her name? Anna Wintour, the Vogue lady.
Oh.
Who's like the mean lady and whatever. You're out. My coffee was 1 degree too cold. You're out. Like, we're not that industry.
No.
So for us to make a decision to let somebody go, it's expensive for us to do that.
It is.
And so from that alone, like, if people think we're just going, who's next today? Like, it's a stupid business decision. We're not doing that in our industry. So, and we're small dental offices.
Yeah.
So maybe it's different in a large DSO group practice or a corporate. Like, I don't know about that. I can't speak to that, but I can say for a small business owners, this is a very hard decision. And I don't know every small business owner, but I would say, just speaking from both sides of it, the logistics and the feeling and all the work it takes, we're not just firing people right and left for no reason.
No.
So that's always surprising to me. So that morning I was like, really, y'all, there's a buzz in the air that people are like, kind of like, what's going on? And I'm like, okay, I mean, that's fair because they don't know all of the things that we've gone through with this person, but I would hope you would trust me. And I guess to me, it's kind of disappointing and irritating, frankly, that you think I just woke up and decided to fire somebody.
Right.
Like, you think I'm that dumb. Like, okay, well.
Or that heartless.
Yeah.
That dumb or that heartless. And again, you, especially on your team, you would assume an implicit trust in that. But there's something about a termination that breaks that trust for the employer and employee relationship. And sometimes it just takes a resetting to go, hey, you guys know me well enough to know that this was mentally, I fought over this decision. This was emotionally incredibly hard. It's not a decision that I wanted to make. I'm sad about it, to be perfectly honest. And just that can be enough to like, hello, wake up team. Of course she didn't want this. Of course she wouldn't have done this willy-nilly. And I still think it's okay if it was somebody that had lots of performance issues and those were all carefully managed behind the scenes as they should be, and it wasn't talked about amongst the team as it should be, then it can be a surprise to team members when you've handled things very delicately the way that they should be handled with performance issues. It can come as a shock to the team. And so I think it's okay to go, listen, I want y'all to know this was a hard-fought decision. There was lots of conversations that happened behind the scenes that led up to this. I'm really sad about it, but I'm hopeful for the employee. I am hopeful for her that she will find a better fit, a home that she's happier in, a work environment that she's more successful in. That's what I want for her. Because then it reinforces your humanity in it. It reinforces that there was multiple steps that led to this ultimate end. And then kind of the third component of that is, but I want the best for her. I want her to find that place where she's really who she can be in a new environment. And I think those three components make for a very good message to your staff. And then in all honesty, there's not much more that needs to be said.
So I don't think I said too much in that one, at least not according to Associate, but
I don't think you did.
so, and I think where for me, the additional point to what you just said is I could see if I was an employee who was not really in the know because it was managed properly, where we did it, where the whole team didn't know about every mistake and every reprimand and every whatever, right? Like that's how it should be. But I could see I could see somebody, like say on our clinical team going, wait a minute though, this person, everything seemed fine. And now, yeah, I trust you, Doc, but at the same time, if everything's fine and she's gone, then I guess I don't know. So we do need to kind of speak a little bit to that. So again, with the first termination, I didn't even address it in the second one. Actually, maybe I did, because from what I remember what I said, I don't remember everything I said, but I do remember saying something to the lines of that I was sad, because I really was sad. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like, when we talk about votes on the island, I think the reason she stayed as long as she did was because of me.
Yeah.
Like, the writing was on the wall. Like, when you talk about who's getting voted off the island, she didn't have enough votes.
Yeah.
But one of those votes was mine to keep her on the island. So I really was sad about this one. But I listened to the council, and the council spoke one way and had very objective reasons for that. And mine were very subjective. I really liked this person.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, all the objective moves of what was going wrong in the practice, y'all were right. And so I had to seek that counsel. And I think y'all have been trying to tell me that for a while.
Yeah.
And I finally had to listen, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, back to then saying this in front of the team, then it was, we've had multiple conversations. Hey guys, when I went to go look back through all the talks we've had, I had 3 pages worth of notes, of bullet points.
Yeah.
Of all the meetings and talks we've had since February. So y'all don't get to see that, but I just want y'all to know and be reassured that these conversations do happen.
There's content, there's data, there's proof.
Yes. And so once we see that we're not making progress, then decisions have to be made. Yeah. But this should not be a surprise, right? So I think that settled the team more or less, or so I thought it did. And then yesterday, so 2 weeks later, I'm in the office, and there are a few other things happening. Like, we had a clinical, what do you call it? Not a interview coming in. And I had a clinical person pull me aside and say, hey, are you bringing her on to replace me? Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? But that was a good reminder for me then to go, we do need to have this episode about the aftermath, because this person is watching me fire 2 people in the front. And even though she's heard everything, she's still thinking, uh-oh, somebody's getting replaced, and I'm it. Yeah. And I had to say, once again, no, you're not getting, you would know it.
There would be so many conversations that would have happened.
And they just have to trust that, I guess, because we're so good about not airing those conversations. Correct. So to me, I guess that was a good thing, that she had no idea how many conversations we'd actually had. Mm-hmm. The downside is it makes it look like it was just a whim decision, which it wasn't. So anyway, okay, so that covers how do you talk to the team about it? Did I miss anything there? Is there any other advice you have?
No, I think the key things are quickly. Do not delay. I prefer same day or next day at the absolute latest. Do not go past next day. If you're firing at the end of a week, don't let it go over the weekend. I just think it's too much time and too much fear and anxiety that people can kind of drum up in their own minds. So sooner rather than later, and then keep it short and simple. And
it's almost like in our pediatric offices where we've got a kid that you just did tough treatment on, and this kid like was fine and did fine, but they're still like whining about their lip being numb or whatever it is. I'm like, no, I need to get out to that parent first. Yeah. Because if the kid sees the parent and she did this or she did that, it's over. I won't ever get my side in.
Right.
And it's a completely one-sided conversation. But if I get to that parent first, I'm like, you know what? We got through it. I had to be tough on her. I had to tell her, I need you to put your hands down. Mama wants us to get this done. Mama's not going to take another day off work. So you need to stop whining. You need to put your hands down. I know you can do this. Let's get this done. And of course, then the mom's like, yes, no, I know my kid. You're right. Thank you so much for getting it done. Now comes Sally whining down, Mama, she did this, this, and this. And now Mama may agree with Sally, forget everything I just said. But at least she's got some context right before Sally gets to her.
Yes.
Because now, again, like the minute when Sally left my office, who knows who she was texting and talking to and whatever.
Well, guys, I hate to interrupt this podcast, but Dr. Kuba and I go on to talk about multiple other items related to the aftermath of terminating an employee. And I didn't want to just drag this episode out, so we will actually resume our episode next week. We will pick it up exactly where we left off, and we'll give you a few more tips to think about as you guys deal with the aftermath of firing an employee. I hope you guys have a fantastic week.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.